Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here.
Paul Dubé has been one busy man the last year. Ontario's ombudsman delivered his annual report today and said his office has been dealing with a deluge of complaints.
The fact that they're up 30% this year, almost 7,000 more complaints.
So what were Ontarians giving the ombudsman an earful over? Complaints about the Ontario Cannabis Store easily led the way. It was the single most complained about government organization this past year. Dubé receiving more than 2,400 complaints from Ontarians angry over their dealings with the government-run marijuana outfit. So many complaints that Dubé had to create a special team to deal with them all.
Was there one factor behind them that you could say, hey, this is really what went wrong here?
I wouldn't say one factor. I think that maybe one of the most striking features was that I think they really underestimated the demand. And I think that's where all the systems broke down. It's just they were overloaded with demand.
Some of the complaints the ombudsman got regarding the Ontario Cannabis Store were hard to believe, like the story of a man who ordered some cannabis from the OCS only to receive a box in the mail that turned out to be empty. He was told he'd have to print out a return label and ship the empty box back to the OCS to get a refund.
That's just one example of an agency that's struggling, that's set up with, I don't know if the lead time was insufficient, but they just did not anticipate the demand. And I had the image of a couple of kids on a wharf with a lemonade stand and a cruise ship showing up.
The NDP thinks it's an example of poor planning by the Ford government.
Any government embarking on this should have known, and I leave it also to some extent to the previous Liberal government, that if you didn't know there was going to be a massive demand for cannabis once this was rolled out, you really missed something big that's been happening in Ontario for a long time.
The Ford government's new autism program was the second most complained about thing. Ombudsman receiving 575 complaints on that, most all of them coming after the government announced a new funding program in February. Changes to Ontario's Student Assistance Program, OSAP, garnered 181 complaints after the government moved to replace some grants with repayable loans while getting rid of a 6-month interest-free grace period. 39 complaints were received relating to the sex education curriculum changes.
What we're seeing here in this report and over the last year is the impact of Premier Ford's cuts to programs that Ontarians and Ontario families care about and need.
As busy as his office has been, the ombudsman said he's actually glad complaints are up.
It's a good sign that people know that they have an independent and impartial officer of the legislature to turn to when they're having problems with the bureaucracy. So I take that as a good sign of encouragement.
Just as complaints to the ombudsman are skyrocketing, there's more pressure on his office than ever. The Ford government a few months back decided to roll the Children and Youth Advocate and the French Language Commissioner into that ombudsman's office. Outside Queen's Park, Richard, Southern City News.